Okay guys, time to do a low boy. I know I promised to have a mock-up done, but I ain't quite there yet. I'll have it. But one of the things I wanted to do was I wanted to get right into the cabriolet leg. The reason being, you guys have emailed me and asked about it. You're ready to get going. The cabriolet leg part of this is going to be the intimidating part. No questions about it. So we might as well get it handled right now. All right guys, this is the leg we're going to be making. Again, it's not difficult. This leg is 34 inches long. That will be our finished leg. To make your leg blanks, make them about 35 or so. The reason is we're going to be using the lathe, and that gives you the ability to cut any little nasties off the top. You want to start out with about a 2 7/8 3-inch square. Square is the key. Now, what we're going to do, and hopefully it's there by the time you're seeing this, is Sherry's going to do a PDF that you can print out that's going to give you the profile of the leg. Now, all we're going to do is from like here down. Common sense says this shaft, there's no need in doing a PDF. You just continue it up until you have the 34-inch length. When you look at a cabriolet leg, you've got a knee, you have an ankle, you have a foot. If you have, on the bottom of it, if you have this little offset, that's called a pad. Cabriolet legs come in every kind of size, shape, and form. Once you have the basis of the leg, it's not hard to do. It takes a little bit of practice, but that's why we're here. Now, this is called, and some of you asked me, we had another project planned, but we're going to do a blanket chest after this, and the reason for it is we really want to get into the dovetails, and we want the dovetails and cabriolet legs out of our way. Because when we go doing our desk secretary, it's going to be pulling everything together. Let me explain. This is the foot we're going to be using on the blanket chest. It's called a bandy foot. And we've actually, well, we actually exaggerated it pretty good. But man, is it pretty. So this is another version. And like I said, the secretary we're going to be doing after the blanket chest, it's got the drop front. So that gives us the drop front desk, as well as it's got cabriolet legs. And we've got glass doors. So see, we just did glass doors in the corner cabinet. Now in the low boy, we're going to start cabriolet legs. Blanket chest, we're going to hit them again. And in this, and in the low boy, we've got the drawers. So we're going to get it squared away on dovetails and cabriolet legs so that when we hit the secretary, we can move on through. And you're going to feel confident. Now, here's another version of a cabriolet leg. Here's one in a Queen Anne style chair. And again, it's just another thing. Another different way it's done. But it's all done initially the same way. Yep. Monty, all you guys, Doc, Newt, all y'all, you keep asking for chairs. Yeah, we're going to get to them. But here's the other thing. You have what's called, we simply call it the ear. Okay? And that's a block that's added right here to the edge of a cabriolet leg. Okay, that finishes it out. So you got a knee, the ear, or as a lot of people refer to it, as a knee block. So if I say a knee block or an ear, it's this little add-on. That's what I'm talking about. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dedicate this entire webisode to making a cabriolet leg. so that you fully understand it. Here's another version. This is one that would be done on a table. This is what's called an earless. It doesn't use the knee block. We're going to see how we do that. You never know. When we get to making that secretary, we may decide we want to go this route. But you're going to know how. The first place you start with a cabriolet leg is with your block of wood. Grain orientation is very, very important. And we're going to look at that. If you look at this piece of cherry right here, we've got growth rings going like this. See them? If you have this knee right here, I don't know if you can see this. I did this because it's got a big, this is some sapwood, but it's got this big bullseye in it. See it? That's not the most attractive thing. It's distracting. If you cut your leg out, if you lay out the shank, which is this part of the leg, where, let's say you do it like this. Let me turn this. Okay, if you do it with the shank like this in here, then the knee is going toward these rings going this way. That's going to give you that bullseye. And I'm going to cut one in a minute and let you see it. See what I'm telling you about. Here's a piece of mahogany. No, it's cherry too, going the same way. We're running like this. What we want to do is we want to we don't want our knee coming in this way. So we actually want to cut this one this way. We want this grain, this which makes a cathedral grain. Let me show you that better. What we're dealing with is the quarter grain, which is the straight vertical grain, and the cathedral part of it, the cathedral grain. And what this is going to do, and again, we're going to go to the bandsaw and cut these out so you see exactly what I'm showing you. If we cut it this way, we're going to have one face. It's going to make the grain track the leg. It's a whole lot prettier. The leg then, the grain in the leg does not compete with your piece of furniture, simply put. Now, here's a piece of mahogany that the grain in this is running like this. If you take a big slab of wood and you start cutting your blanks out of it, on the outside of it, you're going to be getting grain like this. It's the quarter sawn part of the grain. It's always on the outside. You're going to start getting more of this growth ring as you come into the center. Now what this is going to do is when we cut it, same thing. This isn't hardly going to matter because we've got almost a vertical grain in here. So when we cut it, we can pretty much go where we want. But we want to avoid putting any kind of circular grain toward the knee. And the corner of the shaft is always the knee. Your knee is going to be in this part, coming off of this corner. I know this is hard to see, but you're going to see it when we get to the bandsaw. Let's go saw some. All right, this is a piece of mahogany. You can see this grain going this way, this way, this way, this way. Now, this is kind of a weird piece. You can see the grain change direction in the middle of it. Okay, but just to show you, we're going to put the knee here. Now all we're doing is just doing some scrap cuts so you can see. Well, they're not really scrap, but here in a minute they will be. Huh. But I want you to see this. So like I said, we're not cutting out a whole leg. We're just taking something to make the point. This isn't the best example because the bullseye, because this grain is actually fading out, but you would have had, you get this, this bullseye shape in here. And you get this grain, what you get is you get this eye here, or bullseye if you will, and then you get the grain all tracking down. Makes for a very, very busy leg. Let's do another one. Here's one to do even better. See it? It's grain going that way. I want you to see this. There we go. There you go. Can you see what I'm showing you? See how we wind up with this bullseye in here? If you like that, that's fine. But if you know, usually what you're going to find is a straighter, cleaner grain keeps your eye from being distorted. It also, when you get into matching your knee blocks, they're a lot easier to match. Let's look at that one. All right. In this, when we laid that one out, what we did, let's look at this. Again, this would be our shaft, and you can see our growth rings are going this way toward the knee. That gave us the bullseye. What we want to do is orient ourselves away from that, okay? So what we're going to do is we want to get in here. Okay, if I go this way and this way, I'm still putting my knee toward it, okay? So what I want to do is I want to come right here, okay? I'm opposite away from it. See, my growth rings are going this way. My knee is going to be out here, and we're going to get a straighter grain. Let's look at it. Now, all this is a little confusing right now. I understand that, but it won't be. We'll get it all cleared up. I ain't sticking that magic marker in my pocket. I done learned that. See what we've got? We've got the grain is flowing better with the leg. However, we're still going to get a flat sawn side. But even with that, this grain will wander down the leg. It's not going to give us this big, heavy, fat bullseye in here like we had. See? It's not going to give us this bullseye. It's going to come down the leg. Now see, this leg would actually be cut out like this, coming on down in that knee. But here's something to consider. If you're going to have that, and you're going to have this cathedral grain, then when you orient your legs, orient your leg, and we're going to look at this to have it on the left and have it on the right. Now, that means that when you put these legs in, you can either put the cathedral grain out or you can turn it in for your face view. Okay? Remember the rule. You always put your best face forward. All right, when I get to cutting these legs, I know some of you are wondering why I leave these little ears on here. That's just so when I get to sawing it, I'm not out of level. It doesn't tilt on me, so I don't have to go gluing all that stuff back on. We'll have to tape the back on when we cut it, but this just a little quicker. Then when we're done, it's just knock it off and move on. Okay. There's something else I want to tell you about cabriolet legs. If you're the kind that wants to get out the calipers and all of that to start measuring, you're going to drive yourself nuts. There's a rule when it comes to cabriolet legs. They look the same. They are the same. Don't let that intimidate you. Of any single place, that's what throws everybody. You're going to notice when we start doing it, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to blow through all four legs. Then we're going to come back, tune them up, clean them up, and finalize everything. And if we got one don't look quite so hot, well, let's go to the back one. We'll cut some legs. Okay, I've got my lathe up front. Now to lay this out, what I'm doing is I've drawn in my pattern back to back. Now I'm going to show you what I mean. But when you put your pattern on, I want to put your foot obviously flush, the back of this heel flush to the edge, and then the shaft to the edge. Trace it on. Then you do it to the other side, just like this. Now, normally, A lot of times we will go ahead and bandsaw these out and then put them on the lathe, running very slow, and turn the foot. This is a big piece of wood out here spinning. And while we will be able to do what's a turning with this stretch between the centers after being shaped, we're going to be smarter to go ahead and get some of our footwork done first. So let me show you what I'm going to do. On the shaft end, I've got my center marked. Now this is important. On the foot, I've got the center marked as well. I want you to back up to the heel, not to the front. The heel is back where the two shafts come together. Right here. I want you to back up from center 1/4 of an inch and mark it. That's going to be your center. Why? You might not want to use your compass to make a starting point, but it works. Why? Here's a foot. This is a mock-up. Here's a foot going dead center. You see how much sweep we get in this heel on the back? How far this turns out? That's a center point. This foot, if you look at it, we are a little bit straighter down, a little bit more graceful sweep. See what I'm showing you? And if we look at this, the bottom, we're 1/4 of an inch back to the heel. There's the center point right here. We backed up 1/4 of an inch. All that's doing is taking our foot and bringing it back a little bit, so that when it stands on the low boy, we've got a nice sweep, but we don't have it real exaggerated. Okay? Let's take a look. Can you see the difference? Now there's a difference in size here, but you see the difference in the way these feet are pushing out? Now you can do it center on center, but that's what I'm going to do. Now we're going to go to the lathe and we're going to get it loaded. Yeah, I know. What kind of contraption is this? This is an SCMI duplicating lathe. No, I'm not going to use the duplicating properties. Now I'm going to emphasize something else to you. I want you to start out on a very low speed, about as slow as you can get it. Now this is a belt-driven lathe, so it's not going to let me get but so slow. And I just had to bring this up from the back. And I'm not going to use the duplicator. That's exactly what this is. And then it has a stylus on the front. But that's a little faster than I wish, but I can deal with it. But I'm going to make sure that thing's locked in good and tight. Now before I go too far, I want to tell you a little something else. There's a lot of guys out there like oak. And that's fine, but this is not. A low boy is a very elegant piece of furniture. If you do it in a heavy grained wood like an ash or an oak, they have more of a country feel to it. And that heavy coarse grain just doesn't fit the piece. A good woods for these are cherry, mahogany, walnut, gorgeous out of tiger maple. Or you could do one out of maple and stain it or dye it. Even poplar will make a pretty one if you know how to finish it. But avoid the coarse woods, okay? You didn't see too many lowboys going across the prairies with the covered wagon. So it's more of a formal piece. All right, 3 circles on here. I want my foot, my final dimension on the foot to be 2 1/4 inches. I want my pad, which is the inner circle, to be 1 1/2 inches. But this outer circle is where I'm going to stop turning as soon as I get it round. I'm going to leave myself a little bit of room to come back and true up and clean up on the foot. Now again, I just took a compass and I've got a 1 1/2 inch circle for the pad, and I've got, and then this one is the 2 1/4, and then the outer one is, I don't know what, 2 1/2 or something. Okay. Now this is doing it on the lathe. And I know I told you guys, if you don't have a lathe, I was going to show you how to do it. And we will. Now here's what I'm going to do. I'm simply going to turn the bottom of this up about 1 inch. The total height of the foot is going to be about 3/4. I'm going to turn the bottom of this up just slightly past 3/4. And then I'm going to angle this off a little bit so that I don't have these corners to deal with. Should have brought a gouge, but I don't have all my turning tools here, but I'll make do. All right, my foot's going to be 3/4, so I'm going to see where I'm at here. All right, I'm 3/4. Right at that point, not bad. I'm going to go past it just a little. Now you notice I'm not even full round yet. Now, I'm going to come in a little closer on my 1 1/2, my 2 1/4 mark. Let me set up this compass one more time. What, 1/2, 2 1/4. Pretty close to 1 1/8, I think. It was yesterday. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply run down just a little bit more right on my mark here so that I know exactly where my foot's going to lay. All right, this is going to be my foot down to this line and then into this shoulder. All right, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here, because depending upon what equipment you've got, now's a good point and time to do your joinery. But let's look at that a little bit, because once this thing is cut out, it's a little awkward to work with unless you have a mortiser or some other way. But I think we could, but I'm gonna go ahead and cut it to show you, okay? Then we'll come back and we'll look at different alternatives and things we want to do. Now, this is a lot of shaft on this thing, and you can, a couple things you can do. One is you can bandsaw it. I cheat. Now, one of the things I've got is I'm able, this is cut at 2 7/8, so I'm just able to get up over the block of wood, and I have a splitter. If I didn't have this splitter, I would certainly bandsaw this and then come back and maybe use the table saw to clean it up some. But right now, I can just go ahead and make my cut. Now, what I'm going to do is I want to cut out my shaft. The shaft in this is 1 5/8. I'm actually at 1 5/8 plus about, not quite a 1/16. I'm going to leave some overage here. All right. Now, something I forgot to mention is I set this up to make sure that my blade, where it was stopping, was before I get to my transition point. You don't want to get down in there so far that you can't get out. You don't want to damage that center. Doing this kind of helps you get the straightest shafts you can. Now, like I said, this transition point right here, right where the knee meets the shaft, that's a very important. We want that line to be nice and straight around there, because when we go putting our faces and our sides and everything on, everything's going to relate to that point. So that's a very critical point. So we're going to come back and we're going to work on that a little bit. All right, you're going to notice I've got my blade set just below my kerf. In other words, I don't want to get up in there too far. But be careful. See how close I was getting right there? I was getting, when you're doing your rip cut, be careful. I don't want to get too deep up in there, because I don't want to mess up that line. And as you already know, that takeoff thing's a whole lot easier than that add-on thing. Now, indexing off of the foot, that's critical, because we've got a post longer than what we're going to need. And now, you could do it off this end, the shaft end, as long as you're sure that you're where you need to be in length. I always index off the foot. That makes sure that everything's going to be identical. And all I'm going to do is notch it. I'm just going to define that point. See what I've done? Our shaft and everything is already defined. Okay, now it's time to go do some bandsawing. All right, we're going to bandsaw this. A couple ways of doing it. One is to bandsaw all of this out, put it back together, then do it again. It works pretty well. Let's do it. Now, you saw me cutting the little steps in here, but this will do. Now, be careful when you're doing this. Don't get into your foot. Now, I've got a 1/4 inch blade. 1/4 3/8 will make this radius. Don't worry about this foot, right? This toe too much. 2 points we want to be careful on here. One is not getting into our toe, and the second is making sure we're making a decent transition at this point. Okay? Now, I got to grab my pattern because I got a sloppy line there. I'm doing the black magic marker so you guys can see, but common sense says, you know, you want a nice dark line, but try to make it as you know, thin as you can and be as accurate as you can. Now here's the other thing, unless you totally trash this, and I mean totally, we can pretty much blend our way out of anything when it comes to one of these. All right. I'm going to say it again. If it looks the same, be the same. Now let's simply put it back together. Now I've used double face tape, but I can use a little masking tape too. All I'm doing is replacing my pattern here so I can see it good. I know some guys use hot glue to put these back together. I tried that one time. It didn't work out too well. That hot glue holds pretty good, and I'm gonna tell you the honest truth. I'm gonna tell you exactly what happened. I had a matte set of tiger maple legs. I pulled a hunk out of it with it. then it kind of shows up on you. There it is. All right. Now we're going to go over here and I'm going to show you how to get all this cleaned up. You know, you see what I was talking about? See how that grain is following that leg down? Same thing over here. Once we get it dressed up and cleaned up, you'll be able to see it even more. Okay, let's go start to shape this up.